Yeah, I'm recording. Right, so Photoshop. I'm going to share screen. And you should be able to see Photoshop now.
I can.
Good. Right. Very simplistic demo about how you convert an image into monochrome. First of all, just Photoshop. I like to start with my workspace. So I like to be able to see layers and history. And the other thing, two other things when I start Photoshop, I reset all my tools. So I'm not surprised by any funny paintbrushes I used last time I used it. And I reset, which isn't necessary here, but I do it anyway, the background and foreground to black and white. Right, go and get my image. Here we are. So this is an image I marked for deletion. There's a lot of smoke and steam about. There's a large red bus in the background. Wherever you can't, I couldn't get close to the subject of this photo, which is Tinkers Park Steam Fair down in Sussex about 5 years ago. And if I moved round, there's even more stuff in the background. But of course, the bright red bus distracts rather. So I thought rather than delete it, I'll just try and see if I can do something useful in mono. So the first thing I'm going to do is crop it down. Like so. When I'm in Photoshop, it's just a sort of habit I was taught as good practice. Once I've cropped an image, I like to take a copy of it so that if I completely muck it up, I've always got a copy within Photoshop to go back to. So I'm just going to duplicate that layer. And so I've got a bit of belt and braces. I'm just going to turn the original one off. So there's the working copy I'm going to adjust. Right, I'm working with layers, so I'm working what they call non-destructively. So I'm not altering pixels of the original image. I'm just superimposing changes on top of them. And first thing I'm going to do is just tweak the exposure slightly. I'm not going to do much to this, but I'm going to tweak the exposure. So on the bottom right-hand side, at the bottom of the panels, I'm going to change the levels slightly. And you can see it's created a new layer where the level changes will sit. And I'm just going to bring up the black and adjust the mid-tones just to make it a little bit punchier. So that's all I'm doing for now. I can always go back because I'm using layers. If I wanted to alter that in the future, I'll just go back to this layer and there's the adjustments. Right, so let's make it monochrome. Once again, I'm going to do it using a layer. So I'm going down to the bottom right, click on here, black and white, and it's putting a layer here which has made it monochrome. I know this area here is yellow. So if you watch it as I adjust the yellow slider, and of course the bus is red. So I'm just going to take the bus out a little bit. And I might turn the green down a bit. Depending on the image, these can be more or less useful because certainly with some other images I've used, like flower photography, I've managed where I've put in a monochrome layer to get a special effect. I've tweaked these to bring up the center of the flower, whatever. So now I have a monochrome image with the exposure adjusted slightly, and I'm just going to add a vignette to finish this one off. So I'm adding a new layer up the top. I'm going to go to my paintbrush. I'm going to get a nice big soft paintbrush, so the hardness is right down to 0. But I'm going to make the paintbrush quite large. Here, that will do. And the reason for that is I want the paintbrush to be mainly feathering rather than painting, if you like. And I'm going to bring the white to the foreground and just manually vignette it. I'm doing it manually because I don't particularly want an even vignette with this, because once again, it's the nature of the image. But I want the vignette to vary depending on where on the edge I am. So I'm just going to do that. And of course, if I don't like what I've done, I can either take it out by switching to black, or I can use the Photoshop history brush and remove it. So that's really all I've done with this image. I don't think it's got much potential for anything else. Other images I might do more work, well, I probably would do more work on, but this one, I think that's about it. And then the last thing I do when I finish with an image, I normally take what they call a stamp copy, and I'm pressing down 4 keys, Option, Command, Shift and E, and that just creates a copy of the image as it is. So if I wanted to save that, I would just save that layer. And that's about it for this image. Right.
So, Owen, when you said you were sort of saving layer 2, is that a flattened image? Is that the layers have been flattened?
Image. So what I can do is switch off all the others. So layer 2 is a flattened image, which the reason I guess I do a stamp layer every so often when I've done something significant or when I've finished, is that it's almost like drawing a line saying, right, I'm not going to tweak anything I've done so far again. I'm going to move on from here. It's like a sort of watershed. And if I wanted to save that, like save this as a new image, like a JPEG, I would just save that layer now. It does, of course, double your Photoshop file size quite nicely. So once again, this layer and this layer are not strictly necessary. They just tend to be things I do as putting stamps when I'm doing editing.
The other question I've got is on the vignette.
Yeah.
Is it just black and white, or can you do shades of grey or colour?
Oh, you can do what you like. I chose a, let me just take that off and go back to where I was. So I could what did that say? Why am I not? Because I've got the wrong thing selected, that's why. Right. So I could do what I like, really. I could do something nice and pastel there. I'm just going to Command Z out of that. Control Z, of course, for a Mac. But I think now I've got an image which perhaps I won't throw away after all. I could put that to me is a memory shot, what I think of as a memory shot. It reminds me nicely of the day. I've got that engine, and I'll probably keep it, but it's not worthy of doing anything else with because it's not that good. But very straightforward to change anything. So for instance, I can still change my exposure here, go back and do it. That's the beauty of doing the layers, that you can go back and alter stuff. Right, I'm now going to stop sharing and go into Lightroom. So I'm going to stop sharing, share again, and I can't see Lightroom. Hang on. Let me just try again. Share that in. Right, so I'm in Lightroom. I've got an image here which I took on the Thames estuary probably a couple of years ago as I was going past it on the paddle steamer. And this is a moored boat. That tower is part of the boat. It's a drilling rig. And once again, it's an image I sort of think, is it worth keeping? It's certainly, to my mind, not worth doing a lot with. But I thought I might try seeing if I could improve it by going to mono. I'm not convinced I did or not. Now, what I tend to do, I must say I do most of my basic editing in Lightroom because I find it easier. I'm just going to up the clarity and dehaze this slightly, make it a little more punchy. And then here under basic, there's a tab where my mouse is, which is black and white. And you've got the same sort of thing as before. You've got all the color sliders, but you've also got a gallery here, which I quite like. So you can pick on a whole variety of presets for mono. You know, that is a very contrasty, punchy shot, a little too dark for my liking. But if we, for instance, took that one, let me just take that down. And then once again, if you look at the bottom of the boat, depending on the image and the colors on the original image, the bottom of that boat I know is red. So I could actually just darken it down, which I think is slightly more in keeping with a picture of a boat. And I believe this was blue, but I can't remember. Yes, it was. But of course, then it's altering the sky. So you can do your tweaks here as well, depending on the image. I still think this is probably not an image worth keeping. But it's perhaps, I think, a little nicer in black and white, in monochrome, than it was in colour. A little more interesting, but not a lot. One of those grab shots, you either take it or you don't as you sail by. I don't think this merits much time on editing. I think it's worth popping it into monochrome and getting a feel for whether it's worth keeping or not. And I say with this one, it still doesn't excite me particularly in monochrome. Right, any questions on that?
Can you do local adjustments on it?
You can. So
I see you've got a magic wand there.
Yeah, well, I could, if I can remember how to do it. If I, for instance, marked that, inverted it, and then I could not that you'd want to change that with the sky, but so you can either do it with marking places, and of course you can actually have several filters going, or you could use the rectangular one and just do the sky. If you want to get it level, you press Shift, I think, and it levels it up, yes. And once again, if I wanted to change the sky, that would do that without changing the superstructure of the boat. So you can do all your normal adjustments you could in color when you're in monochrome, but it's almost a question knowing what you want to achieve and whether it's worth it. And of course, using the history, I could always go back to where I was before and just get rid of it. One thing I do like about Photoshop and Lightroom is the history facilities. You can go back to where you were and decide or alter from there onwards. So it's very, to me, very non-destructive way of editing. So converting to monochrome, I find very, very straightforward in both products. It's a question of, you know, if you've got, I think, a poor image to begin with, monochrome ain't going to improve it. It ain't going to improve it greatly. It may improve it slightly by removing distracting colors or whatever. That's it, I think.
So stop recording.
Yep. Oh, stop recording. I'm recording.